Whether your setting takes place during an ongoing war, or large skirmishes break out over the course of your game, big battles can serve a narrative purpose to make your world feel more enriched and dynamic. Maybe you watched Lord of the Rings, or Kingdom of Heaven, maybe you replayed Rome Total War or Star Wars Empire at War, and want to add some larger scale conflicts for your players to be directly involved in. You've decided a mass conflict is needed to convey the story and help the players and PCs alike feel more connected to the world. Well, let's get our briefing, learn our objectives, and prepare for battle. To clear a couple things up right away, these are rules that I use to make larger scale warfare work for me. Take what you like from here and change it however works best for you. These are just a starting point. These are not rules to simulate a war game. If I want to play a war game, I'll play Flames of War or GDW games or something that's not an RPG. So if you're looking for rules on how to make large-scale warfare a big, huge event, maybe table spanning, go check out GURPS Mass Combat. I'll have a link to the description, but be aware that those rules, even though simplified, are still pretty darn crunchy. The technique I use is more narrative than tables and fixed and variable numbers for artillery bombardment calculations. I'll gladly do that for a few ships in Traveler, but not for thousands of NPCs in my RPGs. Secondly, I'm not in the military, nor have I ever been. I'm not trying to replicate a military simulation. I'm not a military genius. That's not who I am. These are just guidelines I use for myself that are to ensure that the players and the PCs feel like they're involved and have an impact without the need for GDW-style stat books and the like. Although those are fun in their own right, they're just not appropriate, in my opinion, for an RPG, especially if you want it to go fast and smoothly. Okay, so the first thing you really need to figure out is, does your story need a massive battle? And by that I mean, will it help the narrative experience? Is it easier to roleplay the aftermath of a battle so you don't have to worry about making one of these fun large-scale skirmishes? That's up to you. Sometimes I don't want to throw my PCs into a large battle because it won't do the story any good, as they won't really have much of an impact on it, or it's not vital to their personal stories. Remember, with an RPG, it is a world, but remember, we are telling the stories of the PCs. So, if they are not going to have any direct impact, or it's not going to affect them in any specific way, sometimes it's not worth it. However, once you've figured out that yes, I do indeed need to run some sort of large-scale skirmish to deliver a compelling story, it's time to work on how to best run that. Now, there are other YouTube videos on this topic, and they mostly use a medieval-esque backdrop. I figured I'd do something different and use a futuristic sci-fi setting. However, please understand that these guidelines I use for myself will work for anything that's D&D, maybe RuneQuest, Call of Cthulhu, which I have specifically actually used this in Call of Cthulhu as well as Traveler. But since D&D is done to death, basically, I'm going to use a pseudo-Traveler setting to convey my ideas. Also, this is not a video on the lead up to a war and the philosophy and the geopolitical rhetoric that ignites one. If that's a subject that interests you, such as how to write into a story how wars can start in your RPGs, let us know in the comments, because I do believe that's something that Matt and I would have a better chance of discussing together. These guidelines will help you once you've already established the scene and the battle is imminent. Because as a game master, your brain is already all over the place. You do need to keep it simple, and most importantly, about the PCs. Remember, we play an RPG to play a hero, or at least a singular character, and you'd play a wargame if you wanted to worry about platoons and the like. We are looking to tell the stories of the PCs during the chaos of a huge battle. Maybe 100, maybe 100,000. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is with a simple flowchart. So let's play this out together. Again, these are guidelines that are system agnostic. It's just more fun to explain how I do it in a story narrative form. Capital is the Third Imperium's government planet. Think of Coruscant from Star Wars, because it's also a giant city, and is being besieged by a rebellion force that has been amassing for years right under their nose. The city planet needs to be retaken, or civilization as the galaxy and the PCs know it will cease to exist. The PCs have been hired on as military contractors and are charged with establishing a beachhead in the largest sub-city of the planet, along with a longtime NPC buddy who will be commanding most of the ground forces. Their end goals are simple, but not easy. Shut down the defense network so more landing craft can drop the first wave of the whole invasion army. The PCs need to take control of the tower that controls the anti-air and anti-ship batteries blowing the Imperial Navy's fleet out of the sky. A special detachment of 100 Star Recon Marines will accompany the PCs in stealth landers while the PCs use a drop pod. So here is the flowchart. Normally you'd have this all filled out, but sometimes seeing the blank one is helpful too. We can see the priority is to shut down the defense tower, that's number 1, but the ultimate goal is to establish a beachhead. Let's see how it plays out. The drop pod's nav computers land the PC square on top of the building. The stealth shielding hid the tiny pod's signatures from an already overwhelmed anti-air defense system. The Recon Star Marines are starting to land, along with the light scout armor help to deal with larger threats. Some of the landing craft get off gun runs before returning to the carriers in space, taking out some of the heavier armor that they didn't completely realize that they were going to have to take on. The PCs quickly make their way inside the tower and are immediately dealt with their first choice. On this flowchart, you can see that there are 3 problems the PCs have, and they can have a direct impact on during the ensuing battle. Mind you, right now, all the other things going on are set dressing. This is where they become interactive. Unfortunately, intel was a little hazy on the enemy assets. There are human-controlled anti-air crews shooting down the scout force's ships. The Allied light armor isn't equipped to take out all the enemy armor patrolling the streets, and those that are manning the defense terminals inside this tower are being held at gunpoint, clearly conscripted against their will. Now the PCs have a choice here. What will they do to help impact the battle? They don't know what will happen if they do or do not do something, and they don't really have time to think. As a DM, you can't give them time to think here. Just make them act. The PCs know that their beloved friend is on the ground somewhere, and they hope that the NPC can deal with the armor on the ground, or at least survive it. They also believe that the Recon Marine pilots are the best of the best, and can do anything they can to avoid these missiles. So they believe it is most logical to help the conscripts, instead of just blowing the tower to smithereens. This choice will have consequences. The PCs are able to defeat the guards, and help the conscripts be freed. Because of this, there is a secret that they can reveal to the PCs. I usually have one of the choices the PCs make can reveal a piece of information that can help them turn the tide of the battle. All the choices will have positive and negative consequences. This choice happened to be the best positive that they could have. The freed conscripts open the gun locker, giving the PCs heavy weapons for armor, as well as give the player some control of the defenses, allowing them to take out some of the enemy assets in a safer manner. But let's take a look at the rest of the choices. Each of them had a benefit and a consequence. It looks like the hero's NPC friend, the ground commander, is pinned down by heavy enemy tank fire. And some of the routing enemies that saw the beginning of the landing craft are seeing some of them being destroyed, and they're deciding to regroup and come back. So now what? This is the only time I like to use a die roll, however you don't have to. The PCs need to know that they couldn't do anything. It's a massive chaotic battle. So I'd either roll a die to see if the enemies come back, or if the PC's friend gets killed. Now it's up to you if you want to leave it up to chance, or if you have an interesting story element you can add due to these outcomes. For the sake of argument, because the PCs didn't take out the tanks right away, and even though they have heavy weapons, a patrolling tank blasts the NPC commander. This is now driving the story using a more personal tone. This whole battle happened, but now it's even more personal because the PC's friend was killed. Not only that, but it was because the PCs experienced the chaotic decision-making that accompanies battles like this. Because they failed to act in a certain way, there are now lasting consequences for the rest of the battle and for the rest of the game. However, the PCs have control over the tower and over the city, and have established a safe landing zone for the main invasion force. The PCs did their job and helped advance the story, while a huge battle raged on around them. We focused on the PCs, but they also had a direct impact on the battle and the NPCs around them. This battle helped tell a story, and there was more there to help the players feel intertwined with the setting. So in the end, a basic flowchart is what I use to help keep me as a game master on track during the battle. You'll notice I didn't do anything with percentages of success and failures, nor did I employ a cascading effect roll. As a game master, I have enough to worry about. Charts and troop movement diagrams aren't going to help keep me or my players in the game. Just like Matt and I's video on the pace, drama, and realism, sometimes you just need to take off your wargamer hat and make a big battle more streamlined and simple. Again, this chart works for any system. I just used the Traveler Sci-Fi backdrop to paint the scene. A final note, I didn't show you any encounters or the like, mainly because those are up to you. The flowchart makes it look like a short battle, but the assumption is that each of those conflicts will have a firefight or some other obstacle that requires initiative. The PCs clearing the defense tower would have had to fight at least 2 waves of 5 to 7 guards, and maybe even automated turrets. And trying to save the NPC ally would have had a firefight between the PCs and some infantry, as the heavy weapons guy on the PC's team dealt with the tanks. The missile systems may have needed to be taken out via a sniper or a drone, while the other PCs dealt with infantry. So in the end, make sure to have an encounter built for each of those stages, but don't be afraid to vary up how they can be dealt with. Also, don't be afraid to spotlight some PC with a specific skill that might be better for dealing with something, like a heavy weapons expert, or someone who is better at sapping or sniping. So, did this help? Are larger scale battles a little bit more in your reach now? Do you have anything to add to it? Again, I'll have a link to GURPS Mass Warfare and a link to the Traveler Mass Warfare rules. Starfinder and Pathfinder has some rules for it too, and if you'd like to add more crunch to the system, go on ahead. We hope this helps you make your large battles more fun. Remember, if it doesn't help tell the story, you don't necessarily have to do it, but if it's going to help drive the story and help make your players feel more immersed in the world, go for it. Hopefully this is exciting, and hopefully this helps you think about adding bigger battles to your RPGs. Thank you guys for watching, and remember to game on.